Hey all, it's Starzy, and today we are here to do my December wrap-up. It's been a few weeks. December to January is kind of a busy time between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm working this holidays, but I'm here and we're going to talk about the last books that I read in 2020 and a few movies, I guess. And Ginger Snaps is here too for moral support. A lot of my reading in December was actually physical for like the first time all year because libraries have finally opened back up, but I no longer have any of the books. Alright, so the first thing that I read in December was a YA thriller, a YA horror, I guess, and that was Harrow Lake by Kate Ellis. And this is the story of a girl with like her father's like a famous movie director or something, I think. But some stuff happens and she has to go stay with her grandmother in this small town, and weird stuff is kind of happening. And I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was, I'm trying to remember, like this was the start of December and so I'm trying to remember what the hell was going on. But yeah, there was some creepy stuff and I liked how it was written. The only thing about this book that I didn't necessarily love was I felt like the way it was all wrapped up in the end was a bit like, and there were things that kind of weren't explained to an extent, and especially like, how does a teenager go off and live by herself and stuff. But I had that a bit with books, I feel, where the endings always make me not love it quite as much because I'm a bit like, but I still did really enjoy it overall, and it was like creepy and all that good stuff. So, and again, it's also one of those books that's like, is it supernatural or not? Which is a common theme amongst those kind of books as well. I also listened to The Mindful Kind by Rachel Cable. This is a non-fiction book about like mindfulness, which I really like kind of mindfulness practices, and it's kind of what draws me to witchcraft so much as well, because there's a lot of crossover there in like, because a lot of like witchcraft practices are essentially mindfulness practices in various ways. But yeah, as someone who suffers from anxiety and all of that kind of stuff, I don't know, mindfulness is good, and I thought this would be a valuable thing to listen to. I didn't rate it. I find it hard to rate non-fiction. It's one of those things, most non-fiction, like, you can always take something from it, but how much it appeals to you is going to be completely personal. And it's also one of those things that I wasn't always necessarily 100% paying attention because I was listening to it, but and also there's probably not much new in there to me because I know a lot, like I have read and practiced a lot of mindfulness type stuff, but like still kind of a valuable thing to listen to if you need some advice on just kind of being present and not letting the external world affect your internal world too much, to a negative extent. Yeah, I don't know. Wow, how do I do this again? Then I get onto the physical books that I got from my library. Very excited the library's open again. So first of all, I read Zodiac Starforce Volume 1 by The Power of Astra, which is a magical girl graphic novel. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I'm just a sucker for magical girls, I'll be honest. Like, when I was a toddler, basically, I was watching Sailor Moon, have always been obsessed with Sailor Moon, and amongst other various magical girl media. So this is just kind of that bright, colourful wholesomeness you want from magical girls, although there's also kind of some darker stuff going on, I guess. I don't know. The art was beautiful, and it's magical girls, and so I liked it. Then I read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, which is an adult thriller, horror. It's categorized as a thriller, but I have seen some discussion by people that it's kind of more horror in a number of ways. I don't necessarily feel like that's the most important distinction to make, that there's often a lot of crossover there. But this story is about it's essentially about gentrification, but to the extreme, because you've got this predominantly black community that is kind of slowly being bought up by, you know, real estates who were selling it to white people, etc. And people keep going missing and all this kind of stuff. I gave this 4 out of 5. Again, it's one of those ones that I was kind of loving until the very end. And most of the book's very slow and then it's very fast paced at the end, but that's not what bothered me. It was more like just some of the stuff that happened and some of the way some of the people just suddenly kind of switched how they were behaving and speaking to an extent, which I don't... It's like some of it's understandable for the story, but at the same time, I don't know. I didn't love the ending as much as the rest of it, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it was a really interesting read and, you know, kind of horrifying in multiple ways, especially because you've got kind of some actual history of gentrification kind of woven in there. Yeah. I did think it was really good though. Then I read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, which this one was about a babysitter, and one night she goes to a grocery store with a child that she regularly babysits, and like security is called on her and they don't believe that she's at the babysitter. They think she's like taken this child or something, and it kind of goes from there. So there's a lot of, and she's a black woman, so there's a lot of discussion again on race, and you've also got discussion of like performative allyship, because there's a man in the story who films her when all this is happening, and you've also got the way the parents that she works for behave, and there's all these kind of interweaving things. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars as well. It's a book that now, like a month later, I feel like I don't have a lot of memory of what happened, but I enjoyed it for the most part while I was reading it. Then I get to one of my new favorite graphic novels. I really want to continue the series because I loved this so much. Like from like the very first page, I was in love with it. And it's Rat Queen's #1, which is Sass and Sorcery. And this is a graphic novel series that is a fantasy series that has a bit of humor, and so it's one of those type of stories that very much has the vibes of a D&D campaign in the best of over-the-top humorous ways, which we should know I love by now because I've talked about Kings of the Wild a bunch. And also the art in this was just stunning. The art was stunning, the characters were fantastic, a diverse cast of characters that are all really interesting in their own right. One of the characters at one point, there's like a celebration going on around her and she's reading her book, and someone comes to try and talk to her and she's basically like, no, I'll just stick with my book, thank you, no people. It was great, it was great. But yeah, you're following this group of, I think there's 4 of them, there's 4 female characters who are in this kind of mercenary type group, and it was just a lot of fun, and I loved it. Then I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is the first book in a YA mystery thriller type series. I only gave this 2 out of 5 stars. The thing of this was, so this book follows a teenager who's very into like crime solving and mysteries and all that kind of stuff, and she goes to this like prestigious type school that everyone who goes there has their own kind of unique thing, where they're like, whether they're a renowned writer or filmmaker or whatever. And it's a school that has a mystery of murders that she wants to work out because they've never been solved. There were a few things about this. Was one, I just wasn't finding it that interesting outside of like the flashbacks. I was interested in the flashback portions, but what was actually happening in the now, for the most part, not much was happening, and it was kind of boring until the end. And also I just didn't care about any of the characters, and none of them really felt like they had character to me. I mean, this is just kind of personal preference of things, but I just wasn't vibing with it. And the other thing that frustrated me is that obviously this is a series, but even if something's a series, I still feel like you want some answers at the end of the first book, and just like pretty much everything was left so open that I'm like, it was just frustrating to me, especially since I didn't really enjoy this, so I don't want to continue reading the series to find out anything that was happening. It was like, at least wrap something up for me? I don't know. Like, I read through it because I had the physical book from the library, and I'm more likely to not DNF things if I have a physical book. I didn't really like it. This is kind of a well-loved, highly rated book, and yeah, wasn't really for me. Then I read Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is a graphic novel that is a crossover between Ninja Turtles and Batman, because the Ninja Turtles end up, they somehow kind of like cross universes and end up in Gotham. And I don't think I even rated this, but I thought it was pretty well done for what it was, and it was just a lot of fun to see kind of two, what's the term I'm looking for? Entities? That's not really what I'm looking for, but to have these two things that I like independently, to see them together was a lot of fun. So I did enjoy that. Then I read Looking Glass by Christina Henry, which is a collection of short stories that are connected to her Alice in Wonderland retellings, which I think is originally a duology that I've actually never read, but I still, like, I didn't really have a problem with that. Like, I didn't feel like, having not read the actual series, like, I still knew what was going on in these short stories, and like, I didn't feel like it detracted at all. And I knew that I already knew that I liked her writing style, because earlier in the year I had read, is it called The Girl in Red? And I loved that, the Little Red Riding Hood retelling. And I enjoyed these for the most part. There are especially like one or two stories that I really liked. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 overall. The one problem I had with this is I'm just kind of really sick of seeing like the abuse of females and children as significant plot points in things. Like, at this point I'm like, if you want to do something, if you want to make something horrific, like, I just want to see something else at this point. I'm so sick of seeing it. Like, there's enough of it in the real world. I don't want it in my fiction. That was my only problem with this, because there were a few stories in particular where it was kind of very heavily centered around these plot points, where it was constantly being brought up about, you know, how in this part of the city women aren't really safe and children aren't really safe, and the abuse that happens, and But outside of that, like, I like Christina Henry's writing, and I find her retellings really interesting of what I've read so far, and especially one of the short stories was very kind of creepy and had those really real horror vibes that I appreciate, without any of the abuse stuff. So I really appreciated that story, but yeah. Then I read Thor Volume 1, The Goddess of Thunder, which is the first bind-up in the comic book series that follows the new Thor, when a woman takes up the mantle of Thor in the comics. I don't think I even rated this because I've had kind of mixed feelings about it, because I really appreciated some of what was going on, and it's another one where the art's real pretty as well. But there were also something, I didn't really love it though, either. I'm not making any sense. I thought it was kind of fun and funny how in sections it really poked fun at the type of comic book fans, mostly men, who got really up in arms about Thor becoming a woman, and it poked fun at that a little bit, and I thought that was, I appreciated that. I'm not sure about Thor being a title rather than a name though. That's a bit weird to me, the way it was treated, how like the original Thor can't be called Thor anymore, even though like God of Thunder was the title, not his name. But outside, like, I don't know, I liked some parts, I didn't like others, and I haven't really fully wrapped my head around exactly what it was, but I just wasn't in love with it. Then the last book that I read in December was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which, I guess, is this also an adult thriller? Sci-fi adult thriller, I guess. It has a kind of a few different genres kind of wrapped up in it. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars as well. I did find it really interesting. We're following this story basically where a man's just kind of living his life, and then one day something happens and he wakes up in a life that is not his own. And there's all different kind of elements wrapped around what the story is there. A lot of sci-fi twists and things like that. And I did find it was really interesting. again, I can't remember exactly. I read this at the end of December and I've already kind of forgotten bits of it, but I think it was another one where I wasn't 100% in love with the ending, but at the same time the ending was appropriate. I don't know, I don't remember. But this, one thing I will say about this book is like, it made my head hurt because it is one of those things with the sci-fi twist, and it has a lot of aspects that really make you think about like reality and alternative universes and what is real and who is the real you. And there was just so many things going on that it was like, ouch, head, but also really interesting to think about. So I appreciated it for that. I don't know. Overall, I pretty much liked everything I read in December other than truly Devious, and I felt a bit about Thor. But otherwise, I really did enjoy pretty much everything I read. So that's good. In terms of what I watched, we've been watching Vikings, the TV show, which is intense. I also watched a few episodes of the Harley Quinn animated show, and exactly what I expected. I kind of hate it. But in terms of movies, I don't think I watched any good movies in December. I think they were all bad movies, but like, is it really December if you don't watch some bad Christmas movies? So the movies I watched in December were, first of all, I watched The Princess Switch Switched Again, which is the sequel to The Princess Switch, which is that Netflix Vanessa Hudgens Christmas movie where there's like 2 of her, and then in this movie there's 3 Vanessa Hudgens. Like, honestly, it's just ridiculous. Like 2 people looking exactly the same was a stretch enough, but having 3 characters played by the same actress, like it was kind of fun, but also just, it's so ridiculous. And if you look at like all of the reviews on Letterboxd and all the jokes about how like eventually like, Vanessa Hudgens is just going to take over the world, like we will all be Vanessa Hudgens, like it's ridiculous. A movie that I did actually really enjoy, but it was still like, it was still a lot of that like holiday cheesiness, but I did enjoy it, and that was Holiday, which is another movie on Netflix, and these are both 2020 releases. But this one's following 2 characters who become holidates, so like they're just the dates for special holidays like Christmas and stuff, so that they're not going to these holiday events alone, but then outside of that they don't talk. I don't know. It was very cheesy, but also like the most enjoyable movie I watched in December. One that I thought was like genuinely just so bad was Christmas Wonderland, 2018 film. I'm honestly surprised I even watched it to the end, because it was just one of those movies that makes you like physically cringe. And she's like, her sister and her sister's husband have to go away for work, so they ask her to look after their children, which in itself was a whole thing of like, you're making your sister risk her career to come look after your children. Like, there's no one else that could have done that. I don't know. I didn't like it. And then the last thing I watched in December was The Prom, which is another 2020 release. And this is a musical that I gave 2 stars. It kind of had its moments. It's about a lesbian teen who wanted to take her girlfriend to prom, and the school board ended up cancelling prom, so that couldn't happen, essentially, and a bunch of stuff surrounding that. And then you've also got like these Broadway celebrities who kind of take it on as their cause to try and make their own reputations look better. And it's a movie that I felt like was at its best when it was really focusing on the story of the kids, and all the stuff with like the Broadway stars, I just didn't care, although I kind of liked Nicole Kidman's character. But yeah, it was very cringy. There was a lot of stuff I just didn't care about. There's also the whole thing of, you know, having men who identify as straight playing gay characters, and how that's can be an issue as well. Yeah, I don't know. It had its moments, and it had its moments where it was a bit fun and heartfelt, but it also felt very long for what it was. And yeah, that's why I got a 2 stars, not 1 star. It had its moments, but ultimately don't feel like it was great. Yeah. So yeah, that's everything that I read and watched in December, I think. Unless there was anything other, like any other TV that I might have watched and forgotten about, which is usually the case. But yeah, that's 2020 all wrapped up. So we'll see what 2021 brings, I guess. Stay safe, stay educated, and Starzy out.